about losing my mum as a journalist, but that is totally normal,
Yes.
but it's lovely that you're joining in. Emily Freer says, Alistair Faulkner equals modern day Da Vinci, echo that by 1,000. Is that another friend?
Oh, thanks, Emily. And that's another pal. I've got all these pals that are watching. Oh, thanks, Emily. It's so kind. Oh,
But yeah, I
but
mean,
yeah.
I feel like that's so true. People, it's been such a tough time, and I don't think anyone can blame themselves for not feeling like they're being productive or creative.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think, human beings, we are incredibly resilient, but we are living through a plague.
Yeah.
That's not easy. I think we shouldn't give ourselves a hard time if there are days we can't cope with that. I think a lot of people have found this lockdown the most difficult of all of the
Yeah.
lockdowns, which is totally understandable. But I do also feel like there's hope on the horizon.
Oh, absolutely. I think it is, and I would agree, like, although I like to do all these different activities, there are days where I just don't feel like doing anything at all.
Yeah.
And I think that it's been recently, I think, as you say, in this like third lockdown, it's been much more difficult to kind of motivate yourself, kind of, to sort of,
Yeah.
to do it. And I often think to myself, oh, I'll do a bit more of this painting today, and then it doesn't happen. But then it's okay, because, it's fine. It's okay to not feel like you can do something because of the circumstances around you, but it's all about just getting through it in your own way.
Hello, both of you. We've been so enjoying listening to you chat. How are you guys getting on? So, I've come in to talk about Bridgerton, which is it's a little known show. It's quite niche, actually. Let me explain to you what this show is. We've all seen it. Everyone's seen the show. So I wanted to ask you, when you first knew about it and you heard that it was going to be blind colour casting and that it was going to have this very progressive approach and this very dynamic way of using music, what did you think? Were you all sat on set going, this is going to work, everyone's going to love this? Or were you waiting to see? How do you know if something's going to be a hit?
You don't, is the scary thing. You absolutely don't. Because there's so many different elements that come into play. There's, if the script's not good, it's not going to work. If the casting's wrong, it's not going to work. There's just so many different things. So it feels, I was talking to Alistair about this earlier, it's a very strange time in between you wrapping the show and then waiting for it to come out. Because you want to share it with the world, but then you feel super protective of it, like it's your baby, and you know how much care and excitement has gone into it. I certainly was very excited about it in that, for me, it didn't read like a period drama, the script. It felt very sort of fresh and alive, and I think sometimes, for me, that can be a little bit the downfall of certain period dramas, that they feel a little bit like museum pieces, and like a recreation of something else, whereas art, in any form, I feel like should feel alive and connected and tangible, and Bridgerton felt like that for me. I think it was funny because when Netflix were going to release it on Christmas Day, I thought, okay, they can't think it's rubbish. That's a big gamble for them. But then on Christmas Day, for some reason, I convinced myself that no one would watch it. I was like, that's it now. Because also I'd come from doing theatre, and like I was at the Orange Tree, and I'm used to kind of drumming up support, like, please, come see my show, watch this. So I think I still have that mentality. And then on what you would call Boxing Day, what I would call Stephen's Day, the day after Christmas, it just started popping up on social media, and it just was sort of a couple of tweets from people I know and didn't know, and this and that, and then it just sort of it exploded. It was really, it's a beautiful thing that, people got joy from it. It gave people some escapism after such a rubbish year. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, and I think we all got to share that brilliant line, I burned you. And that was the New Year line, wasn't it? Like, we were all just burning and enjoying other people burning each other. How fabulous. But yeah, I think that it was that dynamic quality, wasn't it? And I think that's when contemporary art can be at its best as well, when you've got something which is new and exciting, and takes something which is historic and has meaning and has resonance and has all of this kind of traditional power, and then it sort of just subverts it slightly and puts it on its axes, and that's what Bridgerton did, and that's what great contemporary art does. So guys, we've got loads of questions, and this is a good one actually. Alistair, someone's asking, Andrea Taylor, how are you getting these bright skin tones? She says, Andrea, that she battles muddying all her colours, and Nicola's got those beautiful bright skin tones. She's luminescent, she refuses to age. And you're capturing it so nicely with your paint. So what's your tips on not kind of muddying those tones?
Oh, gosh, thank you very much for that. So it is difficult because I'm using a lot of whites. What I'm finding with acrylics though is because these are drying so fast, if an area, for instance, I'm not quite happy with this area isn't working, I can just sort of paint over it, and that doesn't kind of muddy the water. I think if I were doing this with oil, it would be a lot more challenging.
Right.
So I think if you're not sure, but the challenge there is you can't pre-mix the colours because it does tend to dry quite quickly. And you can, but you just have to work really fast. So I think if it's not quite working, you can try it in acrylics and just try it. If it doesn't work, you can just try a different tone, mix it again, and there's a lot of trial and error that's going on right now.
You talked a lot about trial and error at the beginning, but I mean, I'm not seeing much error, Reid. I'm seeing someone who seems quite nicely proficient. Can you show us again your absolutely brilliant mechanism there for your paint table? We want everyone on Sky Arts to be able to see it because you gave us the equivalents earlier on. But what is that, Alistair? Tell me.
So this is an upcycled baby changing table. So if you imagine
the baby face painter with his baby table.
Yeah, it is because obviously this is where the baby would get changed here, and you'd have all your various bits and bobs up here, and there's a huge cabinet underneath, so it's all very well contained and out of the way. And this is great because then I don't need to move my easel so close to it. I can have it out like here. It's one of my favourite items of furniture in my house actually.
Very good. Well, yeah, very sustainable. My baby changing table is used for something quite different, but maybe one day I'll upcycle it and take up painting again. So we've got a question here from Kevin Willard, who's asking about music, which is a really good thing to be asking about, because we've just been talking about how cool the music was on Bridgerton. What music are you listening to when you paint in the studio? Usually Alistair, and everyone at home, maybe you can put it up to share with us. What music are you listening to? What helps you get into the groove? If you're having a bad painting day, is there any particular music that helps enliven things for you? Alistair, is there anything you go to help you with painting, or do you like it nice and quiet?
No, I can't paint in silence. I need something on in the background just because it needs to engage the brain. I like classical music, so I like Chopin, I really like Mozart, but I'm a huge fan of other artists like Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga and just all of that whole pantheon of albums of that region. So I listen to a lot of pop music as well, and it's quite nice because it's sort of in here. There's no one else can really hear, so you can just sort of scream away.
You can just go for it. Nicola, what are you listening to at the moment?
Well, it's funny, I was saying to Alistair earlier, for some reason the last 2 weeks I've been going through a real Sondheim phase, listening to a lot of like Sweeney Todd and really Sunday in the Park with George, which is about a painting. And then aside from that, I really love Chloe and Halle. They're the two sisters from the States, and their album Ungodly Hour is amazing, and a big mix, should we say.
Well, I mean, I like hearing your musical choices, Alice, because you are a painter that kind of is a great bridge between things which are traditional. You talked about your amazing portraits with these classical and religious references, and then also you make contemporary works of art. So I can see that there in your music. So I guess the question is, you've been talking about trial and error, and I called you out on the error because I can't see that many errors being made. But you said right at the beginning that you were just going to try really hard to do things which were subtle, and that you would kind of make small gestures and then bring them back again and kind of push and pull to find somewhere that you were happy. Not to sort of do a Joan Bakewell and say you have half an hour remaining, but you do have half an hour remaining. This is your time call. What are you going to do with your last half an hour? Sorry, Joan, I do it badly, but you love me.
So I might be bold and attempt to kind of slightly readjust this right eye here, and if that doesn't work, that's okay, and maybe just add a bit more detail on the clothing. I'm going to leave the background, I think, until after this to sort of experiment. But overall, I think that's
what do you mean
fun.
you're going to experiment with the background? Because it's beige in real life, but it's beige in your painting. Are we going to see? Are we going to see Nicola transposed somewhere exotic?
Well, no, I'm going to try and use a different colour. We were discussing what Nicola's favourite colours were earlier, and I think she said pink. So I'm going to see what shades of pink might work in this situation. But I haven't been bold enough to do that just yet because I want to sort of get all of this sort of resolved and then just like kind of like a sample pot to see what works. And then paint the one I think works best.
And I think naturally you probably want to do that without us all watching, so you can just do that level of experimentation, that playfulness. Well, it's been magnificent. So So I know that those of you who are watching on Facebook know all about this, and for those of you who joined us on Sky Arts, I'm really excited to tell you that we're really, really keen for you to join us in a kind of further art adventure. There's this fantastic thing called the Great Big Art Exhibition. We're trying to break the Guinness Book of Records for having the most amount of art on display at one time. It could be like the world's biggest exhibition, and you could be in it. All you've got to do is make some art and put it in the window. Couldn't be simpler. And actually, what's super cool is that people have started to put Nicola in their windows. So I think that's even happened already today. So portraits of Nicola Copland have gone into windows. There we go. How great is that? And so what we want you to do is put your portraits into the window, take a photograph, upload them, and we'll be all taking a look at them. So this is the Great Big Art Exhibition. Wherever you are in the world that's getting involved, we can make this international. Let's just have Nicola like lining the streets of Buenos Aires. Why not? So there is only half an hour left. I'm going to leave you to Alistair and to Nicola for really, really interesting chat and some really lovely painting.
Does that stress you out when you know that you have like a limited time, or how does it make you feel?
Yes, it is somewhat stressful because you want to kind of present something at the end of it that is of a reasonable quality and hopefully looks a bit like you. But I am like comforted in the fact that I will have some time after this to work on it. So in my head, I know I'm not going to probably have a finished product. There are areas that I still really want to try and just get resolved. But yeah, so I've done some portraits I've practiced some portraits within 4 hours, and it is very achievable. But I've noticed it's also like just so difficult to know when you're done, because sometimes you make little tweaks and then it looks better, but then if you don't, it might look worse. So yeah, you reach a point where actually, every decision you make can change the whole like outcome. So the stakes become a lot higher, which I feel at the moment, but it's fine. We're going to work with it.
Have you ever had, because to go back to what people were saying about, lack of inspiration and lockdown and being difficult, have you ever had painter's block where you felt like you just couldn't do it, and if you did, how did you overcome that?
Oh yes, no, there were definitely some paintings in the past where I really felt no energy or sort of not keen to pursue or do it. But I think the thing that's got me through is like, because in the past I knew I completed paintings, and then knowing that I have a record of I've completed this, that actually helps me think, okay, well you can complete this. You've done it before, you've done it many times before. So it's recognizing that the blip is happening, but also not letting that take complete control. You can always remind yourself, you will overcome this, you will move on, and you will finish the painting. But it's very natural, because there are times where you just do not feel like there are times where I just really don't feel like painting at all. But then the canvas is staring at you, being like, I'm unfinished, work on me please. And so that is another kind of motivation as well.
That's so good. I actually have a piece of, I used to do cross stitch, which is a really nice thing to do, but I have one that I was doing for my friend's wedding. So just was sat there. I think I made a mistake on it, and then was like, I can't do this anymore. Just stop. So it's just been sat. It's a little box of shame for ages, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, just finish it. Finish it.
Yes, out. But I think this is what we were saying earlier about how surgery helps feed into that, because I've in my day-to-day job, you do an operation, you can't leave halfway through, even if you feel like things are difficult or things are challenging. You have to find the mental energy to kind of take a step back, be like, okay, what do I need to do? How can I see this through? How can I make this better? How can I, continue and ultimately finish the operation? And that's, I take all of that into my painting. That same mental process. It's like, okay, this is not going well, but that's fine. Objectively, let's take a step back. What's not working? Where can we work? And and this is why I have I'm really lucky. I've got really good friends who I sometimes message and just be like, I've stared at this too long. What's wrong with it? And I actually ask them, trusted friends. What can you honestly say to me? What is wrong with this? And actually, the feedback I get from that is always extremely helpful. Everyone is always very much like, oh, I'm not sure about that eye or that position. The tone's not working there. So it's quite nice that I've got this kind of network of engaged people as well that really help with my practice too. So that's what we do in surgery.
Of course. And I feel like that's a really good thing when you can, take constructive criticism and, be able to both women have people like that, but do you ever find that you get unsolicited advice? Sometimes I know in the age of social media, people like to.
Sometimes, unfortunately, it hasn't happened too much. In some respects, I'm sure I might get a lot of feedback today. But yeah, no, it's quite nice. I think, and you'll know yourself. You know the people you can trust to give you an honest critique, and they're the ones who really value you in terms of how you grow. And we do a lot of that in surgery. We do a lot of like self-reflection, and we do a lot of like reflecting with our colleagues as well on procedures that may not have gone as well as we'd hoped, or things that were challenging. And that is, as you say, how we learn and how we keep going. And you probably experienced that as well with your colleagues, your actors. You were saying that you sort of pick up so much from more experienced actors as well. And
definitely, and I think it's important to going into any new job to be able to adapt and know that every job will be really, really different. Every director will be different. Every team will be different. So being able to go into that and think, I will be valuable in this. I will go in and I will have an open mind and I will learn that's really useful. And also being able to taking direction is a big part of the job. And I think it's funny because sometimes you see some actors that really struggle with it, and you go, just about being a part of the whole piece of the whole, I guess.
Yeah. Can I join in this conversation? Because I want to take up something with you, Nicola, which has not been mentioned so far today, which is, and it emerges from a conversation you've been having, because you're quite a campaigner, aren't you? When you see something wrong, you want to put it right. I thoroughly agree.
Yeah.
And it began with Miss Jean Brodie when you wrote to the Guardian, I think, about critics and their attitude to women's bodies. Tell me about it.
Yes. So basically, what had happened was, I was doing a prime with Jean Brodie at the Donmar, and I mean, the Donmar is a fantastic theatre that I'd always wanted to work at. And a reviewer came, and instead of reviewing my performance, he basically reviewed my body. And I just thought, this is so deeply inappropriate, because, if he wanted to come and criticise my accent, how I perform the role, but it's just very depressing that, women are still seen through that reductive lens. And I mean, I think it's, we're in a better place now, but I mean, you can still get asked really terrible questions in interviews about your looks and your weight. You think, I feel like I'm an intelligent, grown woman that can hold a conversation. It's just not really right that we try and say, well, let's just make it about the woman, but let's just make it about how they look. Let's just think, no. And I like a lot of the actors that I look up to, like Judi Dench and Helen Mirren. I remember reading their autobiographies, and a director saying to Judi Dench, there's every single thing possible. Everything that could be wrong about your face is wrong, or something equally as awful as that. And I just thought, imagine if that had gotten to Judi Dench. Imagine if she had taken that to heart and stopped acting, and we would have been denied of her wonderful career and how many people she's inspired and how many wonderful roles she's done. It's not really.
I think it's great. I think it's great that you're taking up that kind of course. Do you think you're winning the battle? Because I mean, in my background, we used to accept that kind of thing and had to fight against it. But do you think you're winning?
I mean, I think it takes someone to speak up. I think it really does. I think, nothing will get better unless someone says, hang on, this isn't really good enough. And I don't want any young people, or people at any age, to be honest, that would like to get into acting to think, I don't want to do that because I've seen what they did to her, and there's been a lot of interviews coming out recently, from even 10 years ago, with Britney Spears and all these people, and the terrible sexist questions she was asked. And it's gotten better from then, so I'm like, well, let's see where we could be in 10 years, hopefully better again, I hope.
Now, there was another occasion when you and 24 women with suitcases, this was the point that you were making, crossed Westminster Bridge. Were you coming to Parliament? What was that about?
Yes, well, we were walking across Westminster Bridge, past the House of Parliament to the Northern Irish office, because at the time that we were marching, there were no abortion rights still for women in Northern Ireland. And I'm not from Northern Ireland, I'm from the Republic, but I think, being in Derry Girls, and Derry sort of really taking into their hearts, it's very important. And I feel like you can't speak out for one woman and not try to speak out for all women, and I campaigned for it in the Republic, so I thought, if I can lend my voice to this cause, and you do put yourself on the line, you know, in those situations, and you know, people are entitled to agree with you, but you know, protest is such an important thing, and it's such an important way to get the message out there. And you know, and thankfully, things have changed now in Northern Ireland. You know, the bill has passed, so it's great.
It is interesting because all of these things take a long time to change. I was reporting from Northern Ireland on abortion rights for women in the 1990s. You know, that's 30 years ago. It takes so long to make change.
It's awful, and I think it does take people standing up and speaking out, and I think that's, you know, something I became aware of with being in the public eye and having, you know, no matter people follow you on social media. You know, I want to try and use that voice for good when I can. You can't weigh in on everything, it's impossible. But I mean, if I can, I always have trouble trying to educate myself about something before I step in to speak about it as well. But yeah, I think if people can try to make positive change, then yeah, they hopefully.
And of course, in the last decades or so, there's been huge change in Ireland itself. Are you aware of that change, or are you too young to have registered what it used to be like? Because it's completely...
Well, no. It's so different, and it's really interesting actually, because I've lived in the UK on and off since 2008, and there's such a funny perception of Ireland sometimes, where people think it's this very backwards country. It's sort of, you know, so religious that we're not educated about stuff, and you hear certain things, you go, that's not really reflective actually of the place that I know. I think, yeah, we're much more of a progressive place than people would like to think, and we were the first country in the world to go in equal marriage by popular vote. That's a huge thing, and I think, yeah, I've definitely seen the change. I mean, when I was in school, like I left school in 2004, and back then there was no, you know, there was no sex education in the schools, and it was still really religious. So I can 100% see the change. And I think it's fascinating now how mobilized young people are and how informed they are. Because I certainly don't think I was like that 10 years ago.
What do you think brought about the change? What do you think brought about the change?
I think it's partly social media. I think there's a lot of evils to social media, of course, but I think the accessibility of knowledge, and I think it becoming, it's just young people showing the interest, having the initiative, and realizing the differences their voices can make, and you know, should they wish to, you know, get behind a cause, how much, you know, like the Black Lives Matter movement, seeing young people getting so involved in that and using their voices, educating themselves, is a very powerful thing.
You have your sights set on something else yet?
Oh gosh, I don't know at the moment. I think I've been so engrossed in everything that's been going on. I've been kept very, very busy. I've sort of work 7 days a week at the moment. But yeah, what I always try and think is like, let me educate myself in it first before I step into it, because I think, you know, that's a certain, if you use of social media, definitely a thing that is an issue that people are sort of willing to speak out first before having the background knowledge and before having the critical thought process behind it, and that's a very dangerous thing. And I think we've seen the dangers of the spread of misinformation and what that can do and all of that. At this point, I would just love everyone to get the vaccine. I'm like, let's that's my big thing. And realize how precious the NHS is. That's a big one. That should be on the forefront of all of our minds now.
And also what matters very much, and you've demonstrated when you talk about digital, is the solidarity that comes with working with a team of people. And solidarity 100%. Helps you push a cause forward, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. I think, that's my mum's phone ringing. This is what happens when you record live from home. I think, what happens is, she just can't, she's the TV on, the washing machine and her phone, and I was like, I'm recording till 2, but for some reason, I don't know. Yeah, so I think within an ensemble, I think that's where the best art happens for me. I mean, I'm not very good at sort of creating things on my own, and that's why I find someone like Alistair fascinating, that you can sit down and be so creative like that. But I think I love watching other people work and seeing it all come together, and it just creates such a richer piece of art when you have a bunch of people that are all geared towards the same goal.
It's rather like that, making this program.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we all have to be. I'm going to hand you over to Ty now, because he wants to ask you something. We've not much time left. But over to Ty. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Do I want to ask them something? I thought we were coming down very close to the end of this task, and I was going to ask Nicola what she what she thought of how her painting or portrait was going, as she can see it evolve in front of her.
It's amazing. I mean, it's so. I always think it's such a privilege to have someone take the time to study your face and paint it. It's absolutely amazing. And then also to get to chat with Alistair, who's such a fascinating person. I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for 4 hours more, to be honest.
Nick, I would say,
You can make it happen.
A lot of portrait painting actually happens in the interaction between the sitter and the artist, and I think it's that sort of that strange unspoken connection. But in both your cases, it's been a very chatty connection. But it is that connection that informs the painting. So you've been a wonderful sitter as well. I mean, this is also part of the process. Is giving the artist something to work with. Because I asked Alice this before, and he didn't really quite answer it. This idea of the spirit of the person coming through in the painting, it not only being just about the physical aspects of a face, but also the person and their interaction with life and the world. And I think with you, Nicola, we've had a lot of insight into that and how you interact with the world. And I can see bits of it appearing in Alison's painting, so that's rather.
It's been really fun to kind of think of the link between our two jobs, and I think the shared sort of fascination with human beings and human nature seems like a really common thread. I don't know about you, Alistair.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it has been very interesting to explore how there are so many similarities in a totally different worlds. But yeah, it's been great to sort of learn more about that.
Okay, having said that, you're in the final straight here, Alistair, so knock down the last minutes, and then I'll come in and tell you to put down your brushes in a moment. Enjoy the last bit.
Final minutes, oh my goodness. It's all happening now. Actually, these 4 hours, Nicola, have literally, I've gone like that.
Hence why my mum, I think, decided to put the telly on. She decided I was finished before I actually was.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing what you've done.
God, fucking hell, man. That's a good picture.
It was so impressive, like just getting the colour on there. But
Would you sooner have him paint your picture or operate on you? Oh, you don't know, do you? God, everybody has an ability. He's got two.
Don't sit and talk about it, just start to do it. And I think that's just like a really good approach to have. You know, just start it. Even if it's not wrong, you can fix it, you can change it, and even your confidence of, saying you wanted to change that eye and the level, and then you just went and did it and didn't worry about it. That's a great way to approach life, I feel like.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think just once you get started, then the momentum gets going, but then there's always so many things that might prevent you, like, oh gosh, it's going to look terrible, oh gosh, it's going to look bad. You can talk yourself out of it really, really easily. But I think once you start, then actually it becomes much more relaxing, and you get really sort of into the process. So I have to say, I'm quite pleased with how it's looking so far, but there are areas I will work on for sure after this. But yeah.
Do you find when you paint that time runs away from you, or are you aware of it?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it can. You sort of set yourself up to do like maybe an hour, and then sort of 2 hours passes, and you're like, oh, that's gone. But I think it just again, it depends on what you're doing and how much you're enjoying it. There are some paintings where it's been like, oh, I've only done 30 minutes and I want to stop because I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But so tackling something like trauma, I sort of be like, right, okay, today I'm going to work on Dr. Lynch, Joanna Lynch. I'm going to work with her scrubs, and I'll do that for however long it takes. And then, so that might take like 90 minutes, or it might take 2 hours, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll let that dry and work on something else. So, you kind of piece together certain bits you want to work on.
And do you think, do you enjoy doing a piece that was that physically big and detailed?
Yeah, I really did. I don't know if I would do something that big again anytime soon, but I really did enjoy because I learned a lot of things from that. I learned about how to translate sort of something from a very small screen or a piece of paper into something much bigger. So I learned a little bit of draftsmanship and how to get the proportions right. Reinforced my learning of kind of the classical techniques of painting, which I wanted to convey. And also the two characters in the background who weren't in the original idea were sort of reminiscent. They've got a skeleton and a PPE person because COVID and the skeletons are a specialty. So trying to transplant those elements in, which is completely sort of unnatural, and making it seem to work was also, I think, a really good exercise in pushing myself. So it'll be a while until I take that side and subject matter. Yeah, I'm extremely proud of that painting.
Yeah, it's so cool. And were you inspired, it looks very much like a Renaissance painting with a sort of portions, dimensions of it. Were you inspired by that? By those types of paintings?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yes. As we were sort of discussing earlier, I looked at lots of the kind of the works of the old masters, and again, sort of the older, even like religious paintings, just seeing how they compose the picture and how they got the composition so right. And I knew I wanted to kind of try and incorporate that. So trying to sort of arrange the cast, as it were, the cast in the painting was a real sort of challenge, just to kind of get it sort of harmonious. And there was lots of sort of scenes where things would go. But yeah, no, I was very much informed by the Renaissance for that.
And who would be your dream person to paint?
Ooh, aside from your good self, obviously.
That was the right answer.
Gosh, I don't know actually. That's a really good question. Who would I want to paint? I guess I would quite like. I think the Queen is someone who's been painted about 1 billion times.
Yeah.
But I think the reason being because every painting of her seems to capture something different, and I think it would be quite nice to have that sort of challenge of painting such a recognisable face, and trying to put in almost like a new spin on it as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so maybe that would be my dream sitter. Her Majesty.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. We'll see. I've done a lot of portraits of people within healthcare as well. So outside of the trauma painting, I've painted a retiring orthopedic surgeon as well. So I do like kind of my industry, the surgery as a subject to paint. So yeah.
And what, if you had to describe the personality, sorry, I realise I'm firing 50 million questions at you while you're trying to finish. You can tell me, does that happen?
Don't worry.
If you had to describe, what would you say the surgeon personality type is? If you have to.
Oh, the surgeon person. Well, I'll sort of go from my own opinion because I feel like there's a lot of possible stereotypes out there as to what a surgeon should be. But I think the qualities that I find that I think I see in a lot of my colleagues are people that like to problem solve, people that want to strive to do the best job they can, and they're constantly learning. And I suppose they have high personal standards, which I would say I do have. High standards in care and the precision they want to work in, and also some degree of, I guess, manual dexterity as well. That they're good at. So I think those are probably the qualities that would make a good surgeon, and someone who's a good communicator and someone who's able to convey quite complicated things and distill them into easy to understand language for the person at the receiving end as well. And I would say I have some of these qualities more or less than others. And what I really like about my job is that you can sort of observe the really good behaviors of some of the more experienced colleagues and try and emulate those and create your own sort of version of who you want to be.
Right.
So those are probably what the qualities I would say would make a good surgeon.
Amazing. So what's the last bits and pieces you're going to do?
The last bit. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of fiddling with your anatomical right eye. around this sort of infra-orbital margin, just to throw a few more anatomical words, because I know that's something that needs to work on. But basically, I'm probably just going to try and resolve this a wee bit so that it looks a bit less, because the tone is just too dark. Try and get that slightly brighter, and see where we go. I think we've already got a few minutes left. But I was wanting to ask you, Nicola, actually something that I wanted to ask earlier is you were talking about your campaigning for women's rights, and you do quite a lot of LGBT campaigning as well, and I've definitely seen that on Twitter. That is something I feel is like quite close to home. Is that something that you've been feeling like more vocal about over the years? Is it something that I've always had a personal interest in?
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, I always have had, you know, an interest in supporting LGBTQ rights, but I think when it came to playing a gay character in Derry Girls, I thought I don't want to take this role and play this story and sort of not, you know, not just put into words, but not sort of do something positive with it or give the character the respect it deserves. So I met up with the charity in Belfast called the Rainbow Project, who are absolutely fantastic with supporting young people in the community and families, and then they're linked to transgender at Northern Ireland. And I went and visited them in Belfast. Gosh, it's back now, that's pretty much 2 years ago, which is crazy. And then during lockdown, I also went on flying to chat to, you know, a bunch of gay and trans teens from the Rainbow Project group in Derry to kind of, you know, pitch them, because it's a really tough time for those kids going through lockdown, especially if they're, you know, struggling with their sexuality or gender, and just to say, because the internet, it's just such a strange place. It's so strange, and I think, especially during lockdown, people, you know, were very angry on it, and I think angry about certain things that they should have been angry about, like, oh, stop.
You lovely people, we've left the most interesting and most sensitive question right to the last, where I have to come and interrupt, so thanks a lot. And I did tell you, Alice, that 10 minutes ago, to finish your painting, you have done a fish painting since. Let's see what Nicola thinks. Nicola, what do you think about what Alistair has done to date, actually? How do you feel about the painting?
So just brilliant. I mean, God, that's fantastic. My mom
I think your eyes are rather lovely.
That's amazing.
Well, they're lovely eyes. I need to get them right. So yeah.
Oh,
Well, look,
thank
I'll
you.
leave you to both to discuss how you're going to proceed, and thank you both very much. Well, look, we look forward to seeing it totally finished on next week's program. We can't wait to see what everyone at home has produced. Remember to use the hashtag MyPAOTW, just that, no emojis after that. So hashtag MyPAOTW. We'll be picking our favourites on next Sunday's show, where we'll be welcoming artist Kayum Anderson, who will be painting award-winning journalist and news presenter Clyde Priory. Clyde's powerful reports from the Coke front line have made for essential viewing throughout lockdown. So that's all from me. Joan, over to you.
Thanks, Ty. And that's all we have time for today.